Am I recording? Hold on, I have to check. Yes? Okay. Hey guys, my name is Jay Wilson. I'm a freelance consultant through my company, Onyx Reporting, and today we're going to take a look at a Domo Dojo tutorial around building an average of an average. Now this question has been in the dojo for a couple weeks now, and it's still, people are like submitting responses, and I just wanted to like give my 10 cents on how I would approach building an average of an average. For starters, if I were consulting you, I would say think twice. Do you really plan to take, do you need or want to take an average of an average? Because usually the answer is no, but I think in this context it's appropriate. So this looks like some sort of a marketing analysis project, and they're saying for each campaign I get ad scores, or for each row of activity I get an ad score, and what I want to do is for a campaign I want to calculate the average, and then across all of the campaigns I want to calculate the average of the average ad score. Which again, usually I would say not great, but in this context we're going to do it. Okay. The short answer is in Domo, like you have to pre-aggregate your data to take an average of an average. That's the short answer. But let's work through how we would actually do this, or why we have to take the aggregate. So here's this data set recreated. I added a column called source, which we might look at a little bit later. But what I want to recommend is, like, anytime you're faced with like a brain puzzle like this, do a sample data set in Excel, figure out how Excel or whatever tool you're accustomed to working with, figure out how that works. And then as you move it into Domo, understand where the delta is, and then tackle it thusly. All right. So what we can see right away, and this is the important reason why we want to like math it out in Excel, is we want to recognize that the line average, the average of the individual ad scores, will definitely give a different result than the average of the average ad scores. Like, that's important to recognize. We just know, okay, mathematically these will yield different results, and that's what I'm expecting in Domo. Now let's just prove that that's true. We're going to go into Domo. I've got my data set here, same columns. We're going to build a little card. You know me, I always tell people build a table card first so that you can see the data, and then build a pretty visual on top of it that kind of gets you what you want. So we're going to take the ad score, we're going to calculate the average. These numbers kind of pass the sniff test, and we want to see what happens when I put that total row in. I get 2.93, and 2.93 is the line average. Again, it's not the average of the averages, so that's not what we want. Now, if you're clever, you might be like, I wonder if I can do like a window function that will take the average of the average. Let's find out. So we're going to write a window function that says, give me the average of the average over, and I'm not going to use a partition by clause. I literally don't know what this is going to give us. I'm excited. It gives me 2.83 on every single row, and then 2.93 down at the bottom. Interesting. 2.83 is actually that number there. So it's saying calculate the average of each campaign. So it comes up with these numbers, and then the window function says operate over the whole thing and give me that number. That's pretty slick. Now, what happens if I drop in source? What happens to the reported average? So by adding in source, I changed the granularity of the data. So now it's calculating the average of Camp 1 iPhone, it's giving a value, Camp 1 Android giving a value, Camp 1 giving a value, and then taking the average of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So 2.90 is technically the wrong value. If I add a window function and I say, give me the average of the average over, partition by campaign. Ooh, I actually don't know what that's going to do. What did I say? Partition by campaign name. That gives me 3.75. Aha. So 3.75 is the average of 4 and 3.5. You see that? Not quite what I want, because I want the average of everything. Yeah. This is, I don't think we're not going to get there. We're not going to be able to take the, well, okay, let me roll back. If I drop source and I say, give me the average of the average over the visible data, I get that 2.83. That's the number that I'm gunning for. That's the number I want. Where it breaks is when I start adding in columns like source, and I'm like, ooh, I want to see the source. Now this 2.9 is the average of the average, basically the average of this column here, which is air quotes wrong. Okay, so long story short, you can kind of play around with window functions and make some interesting things happen for you, but it does lock you in to how you can visualize the data. And we saw that by using Analyzer, by using dataset views, we can group the data by campaign, we can show the average score, which will pre-aggregate the data, and then in cards we can get the right number because it's just taking the average of these three values. But then I can't drill into the data because it's pre-aggregated. So usually what we would do at this point is we'd say, all right, let's take it back to ETL and see what we can do in ETL. I'm going to show you guys how I would handle this if this was a requirement handed to me by a client. So what I would do is when I try to talk them out of it, but assuming I can't do that, we would do a group by here on the campaign name, and we would group by add score, take the average, and I'll call this add score average by campaign. Yep, I'm creating a brand new column. And then I would actually append both sets of data together. And I'm going to include all columns. The reason why I'm choosing to append the aggregate and the transactional data is because for me, when I build when I build dashboards, I try to have the dashboard powered by one data set. That way, I have confidence that all of the data in my dashboard has been updated at the same time. I know there's one data flow that I need to look at to maintain the dashboard data set, and that's why we'll call it _dash. This is literally how I do implementation work for clients. Now, the only minor change I would make here is I will always add a constant onto the data set called usually I'll call it activity type, but in this case, they're permutations of the same metric. So I'm going to call this metric type, and I'll call this the transactions. And I'm going to duplicate, what? Why are you giving me an error? Don't give me an error. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this tile, pop it in right over here. And then we'll do, instead of calling it transactions, this is ads by campaign. Now, if I wanted to be, super helpful for my client, I know today they just want to see it by campaign, but tomorrow they're going to want to see it by campaign and by source, Android, iPhone, browser, or whatever. So I'll do the same thing, but I'll create a new column called average by campaign and source. And maybe I would just do one by source. Okay, so I'm stacking the data. I have 20 rows here, maybe 3 rows here, and 6 rows there. So I am increasing my row count, but I'm also creating one data set that has different permutations of the metric, of this pre-aggregated metric to meet that average requirement, but it's going to be pretty clean. Check it out. We're going to build our card here. Like I said at the start, we're going to go back to our friend Mr. Table Card. So by campaign name, we're going to start with the original requirement, which was to show the average. And let's get our total row going here. All right. So 2.93 is that line total. 2.83 is the average by campaign. Slick. And if I wanted to, I could show my average across campaign and source as well. Now, what also is kind of nice is if I want to show the individual activity, so like I don't want to show, I'm not going to aggregate my transactions. I can make sure to include row ID on the axis so that I guarantee the granularity here. So it's a little bit of scrolling because I don't have the widest screen right now, but here I can see, all right, here's all my transactions. Those are the individual scores. Here are the scores, the average score per campaign, and then the average score. Oh, I should put source on the axis as well. Like so. And then if I kind of want them grouped together, all right. So here's campaign 1, grouped by source. The average score was 3.5, and 5 plus 2 is 7, divided by 2 is 3.5. And the average score by campaign is the sum of all of these ad scores. So 5 plus 2, oh God, here we go. 5 plus 2 is 7, plus 3 is 10, that's 9. 9 divided by 19 rather, divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I assume that's 3.08. Please don't ask me to do math this early in the morning. Okay, we get the desired results. I get that 2.83. I get that 2.9, which is my campaign average. And then here I can't show the 2.92 because I'm not averaging the data, but we know it works. Actually, I totally could. I could just add a calculated field, couldn't I? So we'll call this average ad score, and we'll just call this average score. And I could even drop, yeah, I guess that will still work. So there's my 2.93 number. Okay, and then for extra cleanliness, we're going to put the metric type here as a leader so that I can see that these are my transactions, that's an aggregate, transactions, that's an aggregate. This is actually, this is how you build totals into your data set. I should have said that. This is how you build totals into your data set. You can build aggregations in and pre-aggregate the data, or you can do fancy math where you just stack the data a ton of times. But both of these models, what I appreciate about this is my client can say, hey, you know what? I would like to see, you know, in a filter card on the dashboard, I just want to see the individual transactions. And they're like, okay, look, I can see the individual transactions. That's fantastic. And they say, oh, I want to see it aggregated at the campaign level. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's fine. I can just create that column there. And like, just kidding. I want to see it by whatever. The point is that I'm creating this way by aggregating the data. I create stacking rather. By stacking the data, I create like a selector where you can see the data rolled up at different levels of aggregation. by stacking the data, I build in the ability to create functionally total rows, which I could, like if I was fancy like Grant Smith, format this to make this row bold or something like that. And I can build that into the data. The important part for me as a technical developer thinking about best practices, what we did was we avoided single-use data sets in ETL by grouping that data together and then using a metric type or activity type column to differentiate between all of the different types of metric. Cool. So Dustin B, I hope that solves your problem. Guys, my name's Jay Wilson. I'm a freelance consultant through my company, Onyx Reporting. I'm available for hire for projects like this. I can do short little mentorship things. I can do full-on engagements. I hope you'll consider that. In the immediate term, though, make sure to check out the datacrew.circle community. I'll leave a link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel to keep abreast of all of the latest updates, and we'll catch you in the next one.